next year. So I'm going to bring on our next speaker, who is someone I have worked with as he's distributing surveys. Dr. Maya Doyle is she's a professor of social work here in New York. I have been working with her for 7-8 years now. And just 5. I just feel like I've known you forever. She is probably one of the premier mental health specialists, social workers in the rare disease community. She's been working with the rare disease community for 20 years. So we're going to kind of shift it from the medical, the research, and the FDA, and bring it into something that really is more impactful and more meaningful to the way we live our daily lives. So if you give me a second to get your slides, if you want to do an introduction on you.
I can do a little introduction on me while this is coming up. So you may or may not have seen my bio in the things that were handed out in your folders, but just so you know, who is this random social worker and why is she talking to us today? I myself grew up with a chronic health condition. I still have said chronic health condition. And growing up with I will screw this up, Kara, just so you know. I will blank out this screen at least once during my presentation. I grew up with a chronic health condition. My parents and I had an interesting time growing up with said condition. And when I decided to go to social work school, I said, well, I want to work in healthcare and I want to work in pediatrics. I had no idea what I was getting into. But I have been in pediatric social work for about 20 years. I worked at 2 hospitals here in New York City. First in general peds, so pretty much anybody, I would walk into a room, I never knew who I was going to be talking to. I developed the ability to talk to just about anybody, as many of you in this room probably know, because I've intruded on all of your conversations in the course of the last few days, and I've been eavesdropping on the rest of you. So thank you, all of you, for being so willing to share and let me lurk in your conversations. And I moved into a specialization in about 2000 in pediatric nephrology. The first patient I ever took care of, my first transplant patient, had a rare condition. And she and her mother pulled me into coming to their advocacy group meetings. And over time, I started doing more and more work in that rare disease space. And when I went back to get my doctorate a couple years ago, almost a decade ago, I did my research talking to rare disease families, particularly around the transition from pediatric to adult care. And we're all going to get there in this room. Right? That's a project among many others that we have for 8P. So that's been the world that I've been involved with, and I've gotten to know Carrie through that, and then gotten to talk to a lot of families. So what I'm going to share with you today is not stuff that I got out of a textbook, some of it I did, and not stuff that I know, although some of it I know, but a lot of it is what I've heard from other rare disease families about what's been successful and helpful for them, what's allowed them to live with their condition or their child's condition. So I hope that this is all helpful. Oh, I did it right, yay. So we're really gonna talk about I have some sort of broad strategies that I think are helpful for folks. There is no one way to define what it means to be successful, to live with a chronic health condition or with a rare disorder, but you kind of know it when you got it, right? We meet families and you can see that we're kind of on an arc. We kind of know what we're doing. And then other days and weeks and years, you're like, we're completely being bowled over by this, right? So what are the strategies that help people feel sort of more in the black than in the red on a regular basis? And I would never try to define family. We all define families for ourselves. There's so many different kinds of families, and we are creating new family here today. So who are the people that are in your family, right? Is it your immediate family? It's parents and siblings and those folks coming together. It's grandparents, it's aunts and uncles and cousins. It's neighbors, it's friends, it's community members. It's your healthcare team. It can be this whole room of people now, right? So what it means to be a family and how you use that structure, because most of us, that's how we live. Even if you have family that you don't get along with so well, you don't really want to spend time with, but they still influence how you think, right? And who you are. And we'll talk a little bit about that idea of perception of yourself and perception of other people. So that's why I focus on families, not just individuals, although we do a lot of work, thinking about how do we help individuals develop, grow, take care of themselves as well. And I'm sorry, I keep tilting back and looking at this. I should know this by heart by now. So language is difficult because there are lots of different ways we can describe, right, the condition, the syndrome, the disease, the chromosome rearrangement that you may use. But I tend to use the words disease and illness, and I want you to know how I use them so you understand why I use them. Disease is really the sort of biologic, bodily condition, right? And in this case, a genetic condition, processes, cognitive processes. When I use the word illness, and I don't even like that word, it's an imperfect word, it's not always quite what I want. But illness is about the perception and the experience of whatever your diagnosis happens to be. And in this situation, right, it's a chromosome 8p difference. How you encounter the world and how the world encounters you. How you encounter even other members of your family and how they encounter you and how they encounter your child, right? It's different. And for those of you with, say, normally developing kids alongside your 8p hero, right, you see perhaps that the world interacts differently with those kids. And it changes your everyday life, right? It changes what happens on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, and I'm going to ask you all about that. I got lots of questions for you, don't worry. I'm going to shut up in a minute. The other thing about how illness is perceived. There is a way illness is perceived by your healthcare team, right? There is a long checklist of all of these things, and we've heard about so many of them this weekend, right? All of these different systems and areas that we need to keep an eye on, that we need to keep track of, what's going on developmentally, what's going on with neurologic things, cardiac things, GI things, infectious disease things, all those pieces, right? All those things that are what's wrong and how do we fix it? That's what the medical model is about. But the other thing to think about is what we talk about, the social model of disability, right? How we understand what it means to have a disability in the world. And it could be a visible illness or disability, it could be something that's invisible. But the reality is, our world, as of yet, is not really set up, right, for the needs of folks and for the everyday lives of folks with disabilities. Have you guys had a time in New York City? You run into any challenges getting around? Getting in and out? Tell us. Do I have a microphone over here somewhere? We need runners. Where are our runners? Okay, talk loud.
Our runners are running.
Who has something to tell me about their time in New York City? Talk loud.
Here, I got it.
She can talk loud.
What's been interesting for my family in New York City is how I thought it was actually going to be harder than it ended up being.
Oh, okay, good.
I had hoped that we would be able to use the subway. Is this projecting? Okay. So I'd hoped that we'd be able to use the subway, but it turns out that a quarter of the subway stops are actually handicap accessible, and so that got me very anxious about being able to get around the city. And then, but what we found out is that the cabs and the apps related to getting a cab and the quantity of cabs that have a wheelchair
that are accessible,
that is way better than any other my city or other cities that I've been to. And then also that we've had success with the bus system. So the bus system and all the buses already having the ramps on them has been enjoyable too. So there was an anxiety level about the communication of accessibility, because they don't really tell you, no, there's going to be plenty of cabs with and of course the waiting outside is not pleasant, and you do have to wait, but the communication about transportation could be better, because I was really worried about it.
Right. So there are all these things about sort of the way our world is put together. Even in this room, right? We have room for wheelchairs and strollers down front and in the back. I have a colleague who's a wheelchair user herself who teaches at a university, and she can't walk around and see what all of her students are doing the way I can, because the rooms that she's given to teach in at a esteemed university are not particularly accessible. So there are lots of things, and those are just big examples, right? But there are lots of ways in which the world does not completely accommodate all kinds of difference, right? And so that leaves us in the role of always sort of being in the role of having to advocate and having to fight. But wouldn't it be nice if just like, no, the world is set up to make it easy, rather than all of the sort of battle that one has to have to get needs met for your kids, right? And needs met get for yourself. Something else I want to mention is that, as you saw from the title of my talk, right, I talk about living with illness, living with a condition. I try really hard as a social worker, and you'll probably think this is really funny, but as a social worker, I try really hard to avoid the word coping. I don't like it. Do you guys like the word coping? No? Why not? We need a runner.
Who is it?
Oh, I can shout.
Okay.
I don't think that's actually applies to how I feel at all. I mean, it's completely inaccurate. I always reference all of us in the room as like warriors and try to think of positive things and strength, and courage. And so, I don't know, there's a struggle. It's hard, but coping is definitely
it's a horrible.
Just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not a word that I like. Coping is a great concept if you're talking about stress and coping, and that's where it comes from, right? You have, all right, I'm not going to lose this, right? You have stress, you have a stressor, something going on, and coping is I have resources and strategies I'm going to use, and then here's the outcome that I've managed or maybe not managed to address that stressor. Your child's condition is not just a random stressor. Right? You have lots of individual things that may be stressors that you have to cope with, but really you have this whole life experience, right? You are living with and totally surrounded by, perhaps, the diagnosis that your child or loved one, or you yourself, right, are living with. So I try really hard with everybody that I talk to kind of bring that message across, that we are living with, but we are also incorporating this into our lives. It becomes part of your life. It takes time for it to become part of your life, right? People are at different spaces here based on the age of your kids, the kind of team you're working with, the knowledge that you have, right, of where you are in that process. But it is a process. It's not something that just happens, and it's going to change over time. So I'm a professor now. I probably always was in my mind long before I got that degree. Right, so this is information that I kind of share with my students, but I want you to think about the way we try to teach healthcare professionals to understand that idea about the experience of illness. How do we define what illness is? And there are lots of different ways that I hope that my students and healthcare professionals that I interact with are thinking about these kind of aspects when we're talking to families. And we're going to look at, I have a sort of draft in my mind of how we might think about AP and use that to help perhaps the folks that you're working with understand the disease, right? Some illnesses happen completely unexpectedly. Others, we know what's coming down the road, whether it's because of genetic testing, because of something that runs in your family. You may have things that, we sort of know that this is in our future and we can plan for, as opposed to this happens out of nowhere. Things may be genetic. They may be something from exposure in the environment. It could be from infection, right? Lots of different things might kick off disease and might kick off illness for people. Some things are rare, some things are common. Some things are progressive, meaning they're getting worse over time. There's some things that are kind of stable. We know what to expect. There's some things that are episodic. Certain seizure disorders, asthma, all kinds of things like that. So the way we understand an illness, right, and can help then communicate to families, this is what to expect. So as I've been lurking around the AP community and doing a lot of reading, these are the things that I sort of pulled together first, but I am curious to know from you all how you might define this illness, right? It's genetic in that something has changed, right? You have a difference in chromosome 8. it's not genetic in the way that some of the other genetic diseases are, and that, oh, we see that this runs in families, or parents are carriers, or things like this. 8P, as far as we know, right, that's not the case. It's de novo. It's something that just occurs in your particular child, and we don't know the reasons why yet. And not knowing reasons why can be really frustrating, right? Why did this happen to us? Is there any explanation for this? That can be challenging. We don't have an identified cause at this point. Some of you, from talking to all of you, some of you knew through prenatal testing that something was going on for your child. Some folks knew in early childhood or when your baby was born, or you knew that, hey, something's up and we need to look further to understand what's going on. So there are definitely different trajectories in this room. And you may not have got a diagnosis. What's our mix of sort of age of diagnosis? So we have folks who knew when your baby was born, right? Because you had some testing ahead of time. Who sort of had some information within, say, 6 months of birth? I knew afterwards. You knew afterwards. Oh, you knew at birth. Okay. Right. So you knew right away, fairly quickly. Gotcha. Right. And then are there folks where it took a couple of years? Yeah. Wow. Right. That's the infamous diagnostic journey we talk about with rare diseases. It's, what's the average, Carrie? 7 or 8 years for some people to get diagnoses. Do we have a story? Yeah? We were 4. You were 4? 21 years ago. 21 years ago. Well, that's amazing. 4 years is not ideal, though, right? 4 years is not ideal. What am I missing about 8P in this list?
What are you missing?
Yeah.
Actually, it's not entirely de novo, I don't think. Maybe that's not It's occasionally linked back to the mom, to a gene.
Okay, interesting. That's why I'm not a medical doctor. Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I said. Oh, is it on? I didn't think. Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm hearing myself. No, I guess the wrong thing, but I said it's actually, I don't believe it's entirely de novo. A doctor here can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know in some cases it is, but in some cases, because I had my daughter 24 years ago and they told me it was de novo, and then after I'd had 4 children, they put in the literature that in some cases it has been linked back to a normal gene on the mother that I believe it's approximately 45% of Europeans carry and about 35% of Japanese,
Okay.
and it's a normal gene, and it just sometimes gets too stuck. It's too tacky.
Got it.
Too gluey.
Okay,
I just-
interesting. So good. So see, I'm glad I asked that question.
We have a comment over here.
Hi. I just wanted to add to that. Like you wrote, not inherited typically, right? So it is a bullet up there, and that's correct. So majority of the cases are de novo. We do have several families in the research study at Project 8P that both mother or father and child have it.
Right.
And we're just continuing to better understand, causes and what that really means.
Right. So there's a lot for us still to learn, and that's why being involved in those research studies is so important, because there may be a lot we don't know. And so some of this is really what I pulled out of the literature that I found so far to sort of understand this. And there's only more to learn and be able to share in the future. But when we want to be able to then share this back to providers, right, that this is the experience that we're having. So when you got your child's diagnosis, or even before you got that diagnosis, but you knew that something's going on, something's different for my child, it affects everything. It affects what's happening in your family life. In that moment in time, we think of what normal family development might be like, right? You fall in love, you have a baby, you have all these expectations for what maybe being a family is going to be like. So what happened when you realize that something's different from my kid, or if you have a doc come in and give you, okay, here's some information. What has that change been like?
We have a comment up here.
Oh, I got lots of hands.
We have a mic back here. Maya, back here we have a mic. We need it mic'd.
Hi.
I always worked full time, and last year I had to make the decision to leave my job. Maddie, my daughter is 7. She'll be 8 next month. I also have 4-year-old twin boys. Maddie's got pretty severe scoliosis. And while my work has been generous in letting me have the flexibility that I needed to come and go, putting your daughter in a daycare when she's 47 pounds, is reasonably incontinent, has to wear a full torso back brace and can't walk, means that it's not practical.
Right.
So, you know, we would regularly find our daughter in a cold, wet pull-up, sitting in a swing set, waiting for us to pick her up. And it was a good daycare. They were very loving people, but we just realized it wasn't the right environment anymore. So we had to go from a 2-income household to a single-income household. It was purely a survival mechanism, we felt like. So it was a big, drastic change for us.
Yeah, that's a big drastic change for you as a family. It's a big drastic change for you also as a person, as mom, right? What you might have expected your work trajectory to be, your family trajectory to be, is now very different than you might have expected. And you do it because you need to do it. You make those big decisions, but it puts you in a very different place.
And we have a
in your life,
comment.
for sure.
We have the microphone over there
Yeah.
on the left.
In my case, what touched me most is my relationship with my oldest daughter. She was 2.5 years old when our son came, and it's been a strain not only on the parents but on her and on our relationship. We're in therapy right now, family therapy, hoping
Excellent.
to fix as much.
Not
as
excellent
we
that
can.
you're having that, but
No.
excellent that you're in therapy.
No, but it's you know how many times as parents we ask the questions, why is this happening to us? The siblings also go.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're younger than us, so they don't have our maturity, and they don't get the answers as quickly as we do to that question, and it's really hard on them, and they're often forgotten.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we have to think about this changes things for all the members of the family.
For us, that I think that's the toughest thing. The rest we adjusted. I stayed home, and I think it makes a whole lot of difference in my son's life. He wouldn't be where he is right now if I wouldn't have all that time for him. And I'm not stressed by a job, so I can give him all the hours he needs. Because it's, you know, if somebody has homework in the same classroom, it takes them 20 minutes, but it takes them 2 hours.
Right.
So I have to be able to sit down for those
Right.
2
So
hours.
your whole pace is different.
Yeah.
Right.
We have another comment, a similar comment back there.
I think got the diagnosis at like 8 months, I think, and it was
Okay.
a relief for me because I knew something was not right, but everybody else was thinking I was like crazy. So for me, getting the diagnosis while I'm sitting in the car driving down the highway was like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy, and I now can move forward knowing something's, you know, knowing we have something to deal with, and deal with isn't right, but you know. And then I think having like allowing yourself to grieve, you know, initially really helped too. Like, you've lost what you thought you were going to have, but accepting that allows you to kind of move on and just be okay with that then, as long as you let yourself grieve,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, and I think it's a really
Initially.
important
Initially,
point,
not forever.
That grief piece.
Yeah.
And it will kick up again over time, probably, because there are things that will be different in your lives, right? As you are living with your child's diagnosis and as you're facing new sort of steps, and recognizing that this is what's going on and that these emotions are legitimate.
Rebecca?
I'm going to get there.
Oh, no, I just want to we have a lot of
We have a
people.
lot of hands. I know.
Raise your hand if you're interested, and we will call on you, and we'll get the
And
mics
we'll get
to you.
all the pieces,
You'll get
yeah.
Maya will call on you if you have a mic.
Who's got a mic? Go.
We found for us that once we'd kind of got over the initial shock and realised that this was here to stay, that it opened up our world in ways that we never thought possible before. I'm a Partners in Policy Making graduate. We do advocacy, we do writing, we go and meet people. We have this huge tapestry of connection that we never had before. And if I didn't have a child with INFJUPDL 8P, I wouldn't have this worldwide extended family.
Yeah.
Who, and not just 8P, because some of my greatest friends in Scotland just happen to have disabled children who are the same age as Hannah. And it's just opened up, there's so much joy and hope and love to be found in this journey. And it doesn't negate the hard days, it doesn't negate the hospital stays, the seizures, the scary moments, but there's so much silver lining to be found in the journey. I mean, just look.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not all bad, but it can take a really, really long time to get
Right, to sort of get to that
place.
place. Yeah. Do other people recognize maybe other things? I throw up this big list, but I don't want to tell anybody what their experience is. Tell me.
So I was just going to say that, you know, like any parent, when you first have a child, you have these expectations of what you think family is going to be, you know, whether it's, you know, the marriage, college, all those things. And it, you know, it definitely changed us. And at first it was really difficult, but I will say that it actually, the way for me personally, I turned it into a positive was, so my daughter has her older brother, my son, and it changed my expectations of him and not having expectations, you know, wanting him to be the best version of himself. So just like I want her to be the best version of herself. So, so that's, it changed. You know, it's a tough lesson in a way to, you know, think that way, but it actually wound up being a really positive thing.
Yeah. And we let our expectations, right, and our sort of anxieties for the future really sort of get us into these little boxes, and that ability to sort of let that go and sort of take a new perspective is a real, you know, is a real win despite some of these challenges. Do I have another?
We'll do Paula first and then Gemma.
Whoop.
Yeah. I'll echo what he said. There's a wonderful poem, if the families have read it. If not, you can look it up online. It's called It's not really a poem, it's a little story, vignette, called Going to Holland. And my daughter, everything went wrong when she was born. And I can tell you that as human beings, most things we don't set high expectations. But having a child is like a birthday party, I compare it to. We expect everything to go right, the cake to show up, the caterer to be there, the children to come with gifts, everybody to show up on time, and everybody to enjoy themselves. But the cake falls on the floor, the caterer goes to the wrong home, the decorations fall off the walls, everything goes wrong. And it's interesting, because I am a corporate coach, it's my background, and there is nothing else, I think, as human beings we have such an unrealistic expectation for as having a child. Oh, yes. So I think we can all be rather forgiving to ourselves for what we go through. What I will say is that life is full of choices, and we make choices. And while you may or may not have had a choice to have a child like this, you can decide how you're going to live with a child like this. And as a family, we made the decision that 50% of couples get divorced when you have a child with special needs, and that we were going to stick together. It has made a better marriage. We have decided what we do well at, and we stick to it. Notice I'm here, my husband's at work.
Yeah. I've seen
you modify your life.
I've seen some data recently that's a little more promising about marriages than
that.
What's been promulgated.
And socially, a social workbook, and if you study sociology, it's fascinating to note that children with special needs, siblings, rank far better in terms of going to university, not doing drugs or alcohol, not getting pregnant as teenagers, not having misdemeanors, working in a profession that is caring and helps other people.
And being empathetic.
Yeah. And that it is really a beautiful thing that has come into your life if you choose to see it.
Woo! Thank you.
All right, Gemma. And then we'll go with Gemma, and then we'll continue.
Oh, see,
you did it.
I did it. I promise you'd be disappointed if I didn't do it.
All right,
Keep
go ahead,
talking,
Gemma.
though, and then we're going to talk about our typical days and weeks.
I just want to follow. I am one of them people who's divorced, who it got a bit too much, wasn't supported before we were late-ish in getting the diagnosis of what she had. I've got another older child with a disability as well. So it's a long, hard, lonely road, and especially if you're not supportive of each other. But I just wanted to chip in that I had to then give work up. You kind of lose your identity. You just feel like you are swimming against the tide, uphill battle, constant research, no one's turned to. This is amazing. I mean, this has overwhelmed me, meeting everyone. I think I found a peer group in yous all. We've all got like a shared story. I think, like Rebecca said, it does change your outlook on life. I think whereas you used to look for where you can go, what you can do, your child is going to get married, grow up, go to university, you definitely do grieve. I think you just think, I can't change my child or what she's got, so I'll just change my outlook. Right. You know? I then now look at the little things, celebrate the little things, look for what she can do instead of what she can't, what the strengths are. And in myself, because I think mentally I've struggled a lot with it, with just feeling like there's only me, and I then struggle with, I'm all she's got, what'll happen when I'm not here, and I want to be better, and I want to create so many memories with them so that carries on long after I'm not as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's a lot. It's a lot. So when I was talking to Bina about getting ready for this conference, I said, so what's a typical day like with 8P? And she laughed at me. So I said, I do want to ask about a typical day because I want to know what a day is like. And I've been hearing a lot in the course of the last 2 days. But also we thought about what's a week like. You're structuring, right, a week of therapy and school and treatment. So let me take a couple volunteers. Tell me about your typical day, typical week. Up in the back.
We have someone here too. Do you want to go? And then Maya first.
You have the next one right over there.
Okay, we're going to go. Okay. I'm just going to go left and right, and you guys in the middle are going to have to get brave at some point.
Thanks. So I'm not going to talk specifics. I'm just going to say our typical 8P week is if it's Tuesday and it's raining, we do this. And if it's Wednesday and it's sunny, we do that.
Okay.
It's just every day is different, and you just go with the flow and you make the best day you can out of it. Because there is no consistency except that things are inconsistent. Okay. And you just have to learn to go with the flow.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. A lot of the rare disease families that I've worked with have really talked about that idea sometimes of just getting through one day at a time. And over time, things started to sort of congeal a little bit, and maybe we can sort of have a rough idea of what our week will be like or what's going on in the next month. But that the idea of just going through one day is what it takes a lot of the time until you sort of figure out your child's rhythms, right?
Oh, yeah.
We got back here. Yeah.
Right here.
Me? Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that I think early on, just deciding that Amiel was going to experience as much life as our other two kids. And so, yesterday we went canoeing with her. And I was just like, we're just going to try it. And we'll see how it goes. And she'll wear a life vest. And I can swim. And Zach can swim. I don't know, just not limiting her because maybe I'm scared. I mean, also being wise. But I think, too, helping, you said, what does a day look like? Helping Audrey and Josh, who I think adore their older sister. And one of my favorite things Audrey told me, that the reason she's so kind is because Amiel's so kind to her. Nice. And so just like helping them actively, I used to kind of, when they were younger, say like, hey, you guys y'all go play all together for 30 minutes and I'll give you some ice cream. But just trying to, they didn't know I was bribing them, but just thinking creatively on how they could play with get Amiel included, but then it just kind of morphed into a habit. And so then just trying to think creatively on how they can include her in jump rope. They can tie it to her stander and our neighbor friends, awesome. Things like that. Just trying to get it to where Amiel can enjoy life with everyone.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Dad.
I think we had the term the Google Calendar. We had never heard anything like that before, and now it kind of looks like a kaleidoscope of everything.
Yeah, I have that calendar too.
It's nuts, especially for my wife with my other daughter. It's horseback riding one day, and then another day will be 2 or 3 therapies, and then that's just during summer. And then in the school year, you have school and then therapies after. Oh,
you had
it's
a
not
day,
even
Mike.
on.
You were so interesting. We didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah. I think a big thing that we've had to learn, which was really hard at first, was to say no to people and really learn to focus on our family in times.
because you want to. It's hard because you want to bring other people into your family, and you want to do that, but you just have to realize at times that it's okay to say no, and that this is our life, and we need to concentrate on certain things. But every day it's just inconsistent, and you just got to look at the calendar and be like, all right, this, and we both have to use it. And my wife's a lot better at using it than I am, but just, it's helpful.
And if you can pass the microphone to the lady right in front of you. Oh, a little bit up in front.
There's a question.
Okay.
Okay, two things. One,
we'll go from here to here to here.
Thanks.
It's like a triangle.
I think early on,
then
Zach is now 13, and I think early on it was definitely Zach's schedule. And I think with any other kid, it's all about consistency and what you bring into your schedule. I definitely call it the Zach factor, in that we're always half an hour late for anything. And then the other thing that we needed to remember was that our older son needed as much attention as our younger one, as Zach,
right.
And not to say, hey, we can't do that because Zach can't do that. So what can we do to include you and Zach at the same time, so that the older one isn't always like, I want to do that, but the younger one can't do that, so he's not blaming them, and then they become more supportive and empathetic.
That's great.
So
if you can pass it down to the gentleman there, and we'll take the young lady over here. We're going to go with her and then you.
I was going to kind of say the same thing along the lines of what you said, and I grew up with a sister who had a disability as well, and I think that the most important thing that my parents did is we never treated her like she had a disability, as much as we had to make accommodations for things that she could and couldn't do. But I think the thing that helped her progress the most was that we never treated her like she had a disability. It's always about being inclusive and trying to include them in the most important things that we can.
I'm going to skip. As you guys are talking, I'm going to skip ahead. I'm not going to make you dance your 8P. No, because you're already doing that. This is what I want to get to. Come on. I'm getting there. Here we go. Because this is really what we're talking about. And so I wanted to make sure that we kind of to keep us on and not getting too far behind. This idea of strategies, because you guys are already starting to share them. So I want to keep going. Who had hands up over here? Right here. And then there you go.
Right over
So some of this is on your slide, I guess, right there anyway. But we found that a routine is really helpful for both of our kids, the typical developing and the 8P. But sticking to that routine as best we can, and it is sometimes day to day, it can be different, but as best we can, stick to it, and they know what to look forward to. Then specific to the therapies, since there's no cure, hey, what we're relying on is the therapies to help improve the odds of that long-term developmental trajectory.
Right.
But then balancing his needs, Austin's needs, with his younger brother Xander. So it's what some of you have said, that it's not all about just everything 8P. Hey, we're a family. We're in this together, and little brother's part of this too, and making sure that they both have, their equal say. And yep, Austin has his needs, but so does Xander, and so meeting those together.
Thank you. Great. Who's next?
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Your turn.
Yeah. For us, it's everything is planned before. It's like 10 hours of therapy, 500 kilometers per week, no nights. And even if she sleep, I read and I look for what I can find for her, because we just had the diagnosis. It was like 5 months before. And I also have my older son that is in suspicion with Asperger. So I have also to read and find things for him. But everything is planned like 6 months before, and also, it's some % of my time. And yeah, we don't have I feel like I don't have the feeling that, the possibility to just have free time.
Right.
And since we had the diagnosis, it's okay. I believe that in a way she chose me, I chose her, because she brings me a lot, and I hope I can bring her something too.
Yeah.
But it's like I have this everyday fear of what will happen when I will not be here anymore. And it's like my biggest obsession today. And but anyway, we
No,
we
but
go
you raise a
ahead,
really
but-
important point.
but
I think
this
it's
is-
something
yeah, this is
we
the
have to
feeling
work
that-
on as a community, because I think you all have those concerns, and I think it's a concern shared by lots of parents whose kids are growing up with developmental and cognitive differences. What's going to happen as they get older? What are the resources I'm going to need? What are the decisions I'm going to have to make? So, by coming all together, in this meeting, I think it's really made us go, oh, this is something we need to start paying attention to. It's nice to say, oh, that's a decade away, or that's down the road, but it's closer than we think, right? And so that's going to be a shared project for all of us, for sure. Renee?
I was just going to say, I mean, when Shelby was younger, it was easier to plan things and to, I mean, I have one older and one younger than her. So as far, we never treated her different either. So, I mean, we always tried to accommodate. If we went to the water park, she went to the water park, So, I mean, we did have to accommodate sometimes due to weather. She doesn't do really well in heat and stuff. But our biggest thing, I think, since she's now aged out of the school system, is our world kind of stopped. And so she's at home 90% of the time. There's not a lot of activities for adults, with disabilities. Right. And so she plays Miracle League baseball, but that's only 6 Saturdays in the spring and 6 in the fall. And other than that, I mean, there's really nothing. And so I think she wants to go, but then when we go, she wants to go home. Right. And so, I mean, I think that kind of adds to her, probably some of her moodiness and her irritability, because now she's not used to being around people all the time.
Yeah, you were talking about this yesterday too.
And so then it's also with her, it's harder to take her and include her in things now, because she is older, she's bigger, she doesn't get around as well as she used to, having to use the wheelchair all the time. So it's like, it's just a whole different thing. Right. And it makes it a lot harder, though, to include things, so.
And have you moved from, obviously you're in adult care, in her health care now? Have you noticed changes?
Yes.
In that process?
Yes. And in fact, because of her congenital heart disease, we were supposed to be able to stay, because we're in Weatherford, in Texas, at Cook Children's. We were supposed to be able to stay in the Children's Hospital network for the rest of her life.
Right.
Because of the congenital heart disease. And 3 years ago, she went into the hospital with pneumonia and ended up septic. And so we ended up being in the hospital for 58 days. And we're home for like 4 weeks and ended up back in there because of malnutrition. Skip all the details. Point is, they basically they sent her home without eating, and it's their fault.
Right.
But then
so
they
not having that transition to maybe.
But then they put the fault on her, saying that she wasn't appropriate for a pediatric setting. So they literally immediately, I mean, she's not even in their system anymore. They literally took her out of the system and said, you can never come here again.
So we've got some real challenges that we need to think about.
Then trying to find a cardiologist, because she had an ASD, partial VSD repair, and then at a year old, and then she developed an SVT, and then at 14 she developed the SVT. At 15 or 16, my days, I've slept since
I'm
then.
not going to cut you off, but I want to get but I want you and I to talk.
She ended up with
directly.
a pacemaker. And so trying to find an adult cardiologist that sees congenital heart disease
Yep.
plus a pacemaker, there's one in like the entire DFW Metroplex.
Right.
So it's difficult.
I have a lot of contacts in Houston, because in Houston we run the Healthcare Transitioning Research Consortium, and find me because I want to reach out to those folks and see who they can recommend for that congenital heart disease.
Awesome.
Peace, at least, right?
Right there.
Who's next?
Some of the we actually still struggle tremendously and have a really hard time putting a positive perspective on our family.
Right.
And partly, you know, and it's ours. So there's mental health concerns within both me and my husband, and so what we have a really hard time doing is pushing. So when
I'm gonna go look at our pushing and protecting slide. See, we're gonna bounce all over here today, but that's what we do.
Yeah. And so speaking up and saying, no, I'm not super mom, I don't have this, because so often the health.
All right, look, number 2, learn to say no.
Yeah. So
it's right up there.
They say like, oh, you've got this, and it's so hard to say, no, I don't have this. You know, I really need help. We had a crisis in February, and I mean, I sent the most crazy frantic emails through the portal, right? Somebody help us. Right. And then it resolves itself eventually. And so now we go go those 6-month checkups, and they're like, oh, you're doing great. I'm like, we were out of our minds. And you know, and so I think it's still a struggle to say yes to some things and no to other things.
And no to others. Right.
And keep or rebuild your identity. So it's not that I'm my old person, but build an identity where I still feel like an independent person with my own likes and dislikes, and not just being a ping pong in this system that's trying to help me with my
Because
son.
you're moving between both. You're always thinking about, how do I protect myself? How do I protect my child? How do I protect my family? How do I protect healthy siblings? All of those pieces. And at the same time, there's a lot you want to accomplish, right? There's a lot you have goals for your kids, you have goals for yourself, you have goals for your family. How do you keep moving those things forward and not let go of expectations, right? But also adapt them and address sort of what's going on in your particular moment in your lives. Yeah.
And we have one back there in the upper left, and then Paula.
I wanted to say something about feeling guilty.
Yes, please do.
Because I think, and maybe it's a very British thing, but I think you can feel guilty about accepting help.
Yes.
And David goes to nursery 2 days a week, all year round, which he loves, and it does him the world of good. But actually, that gives me 2 days a week in school holidays with my older son, Michael. And in the term, it gives me 2 days of sanity. And whilst I know that, you know, him being in childcare is really good for him, actually not feeling guilty about saying, do you know what, I need that break too.
Right.
Because that recharges my patience. That gives me the space to just be a better mum when I pick up Michael from school and then David from nursery. But actually, I think you can feel guilty about saying, I can't do this all the time, and I need some help and some support.
I think
and
you're
actually
absolutely
being
right.
willing to accept the help when it's offered can be a really tough thing to do.
Right. Yeah. And being able to say, I need to, we all say, to parents, I know I say this in, when I'm in clinic with a parent with a sick child or a couple, you got to make some time for yourself. You got to make time for each other. And you do. It's really important. But it's really hard, right, to do that without then feeling, no, I should be keeping all of my focus on my child and their needs, right? So how do you find that balance between knowing that really to enable you to take care of your AP hero the way you need to, you do need to take care of yourself, right? You do need to reach out for help, whether it's some sort of self-help and mindfulness and techniques that help you stay calm and work through those moments of sadness and anxiety, whether it's reaching out through all these portals that exist now, whether it's within the AP family, within the special needs families that you've gotten to know, or whether it's saying we need to reach out for some professional support and knowing what that professional support might be, what the different options are out there, right, is a whole other set of learning we have to do, right? But knowing that all of those things are important and that there should be no shame in any of that, right? Yeah.
I can echo a few things, but also share maybe some different points. My life was very much like hers. I had generally 5 to 6 medical appointments when she was a small child a week. It became virtually impossible to do anything. If I really wanted her to progress well, then care for her. I did manage to work for a few years. We run businesses now because it's really the only way to manage. I've spent a lot of time also reaching out, because there hasn't been an 8P family over 20-something plus years, to reach out to many similar organizations, from everything from integration to education to so many, anything that I could find that had a link, be it autism, be it Down syndrome group, whatever, to get that support. I will say that when she said about feeling guilty and about care, enjoy while your children are in school. If it goes well, great. Then if it doesn't, just keep praying for better, because it is the one time in your life you will have free care. When they get over, in Canada, it's over 21, you're no longer allowed to go to school. It flips to a completely different system. Planning is hugely important, and it's very difficult to do. And life has changed greatly over the years. Now that she's an adult, it was advocating for funding. When she was in school, I was a fierce advocate. In fact, I believe she was the first child in Ontario to graduate fully integrated with such a severe disability. I insisted on it, and I probably made myself sick over it. I learned everything from Supreme Court rules to you name it, to stand up for her rights and to insist that anything fair and reasonable be accommodated in the school system. Because I truly believe that if you put children that are having whatever differences with children that are doing better, they have
absolutely
at least the chance to reach their potential.
Yeah.
But it has meant that life was very, very challenging. And adding to that therapy appointments and the transition from adulthood is difficult. All those transitions, and she spoke to creating a book. There's a lot of work to be done, so that if something happens to you, having a binder that tells about your child. If you were ill and you couldn't care for your child,
right,
it might just be for a night that you were sick and somebody had to.
Right, but how would you share that information?
How would you share that information if your child couldn't speak? So there's a lot of things we can work on and do.
Okay, see, I'm going to go back again.
It does make for a really busy life, but it does make for a wonderful life in its own way.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been a lot of challenges, and like I said, a lot of different support groups I have reached to over the years to get where we are.
And so that idea of, and I always feel like I'm preaching to the choir when I talk about connecting, because you all are here, right? You all put an immense amount of energy into being here, but we also know there are probably families out there who weren't able to get there, or who haven't yet kind of taken that first leap, or maybe put that first tentative post out on a Facebook group, things like that. So how do you sort of grab those folks and pull them in to where you are now, and then figuring out sort of what the next steps are?
And we have with the gentleman over here.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've heard several people talk about the concerns or fears about what happens when the children get older.
Yeah.
It's not just on a spectrum. Sometimes it feels like there's a categorical shift in what lifestyle will be like in that time. We live in Austin, Texas. And it's a very inclusive environment, which means that a lot of our neighbors are familiar with disabilities, even those who have typically developing children.
Yeah.
And just want to recommend a resource, not only to let you know what's going on in Austin, but maybe what might be around your community that you may not know about, because we were told directly about this. There's a community in Georgetown, Texas, called BIG. It's Brookwood in Georgetown. And I'll just read directly from their website what they do. BIG is a vocational community that provides meaningful work, sense of belonging, dignity, and respect for adults with functional disabilities. Our citizens are empowered to become artisans, bakers, gardeners, card makers, and more. As a nonprofit, 100% of proceeds return to help create a bright future for adults with special needs.
That's great to know about.
Yeah.
That's great to know about. And most states, I'm not going to promise you it's easy to negotiate at all. But actually, when I was a social work student, I worked in a what they called vocational rehabilitation. Most states and most counties have some sort of, it differs from place to place, have some sort of vocational program, some sort of independent living center, which that might be the thing to Google and start in your state and in your locality. That there are services out there for adults, but they are not always so easy to find or as easy to negotiate. There should also be some process as your children are nearing the end of school age to transition into adult programs. So it's out there, but I'm not going to promise you that it's easy because it's not easy. Yeah.
It was just something for the lady down here whose daughter's 24. There's an organization in New Jersey called Neighbors International, and they do a thing called Circle of Friends, and it's for adults who, it creates a community around disabled adults for that connection, and they have they do things like person-centered planning. They plan how they're going to become a part of their community, not just as a daycare center or things like that. So it's something that would be maybe really useful for your daughter, because it surrounds her with people who want to be in her life and who want to have that circle of friendship with her. But I'd happily pass on the details later if it's something that you wanted to look at.
But now I'm going to keep you here.
Does anybody else have a comment? We still... Okay.
We're rocking along. All right, I'm going to go. I'm
rocking
going
on.
to take us back a little bit to the beginning of these, right? Thank you for all bouncing around with me. And there we go. All right. So one of the things that we have talked about, and I've heard folks talk about here, is how you communicate with other folks, right? How you educate the people, how you educate yourselves, how you educate the people around you. Sometimes how you have to educate the care providers that you're working with, right? But think of the amazing abilities and skills you all have developed, not just obviously this weekend, but in your lives with 8P, right? In the beginning, you probably were, and some of you probably are still in the process, right, of getting overwhelmed with information and all these different systems that you're juggling, right? All these different folks that you're talking to, appointments, therapists, schools, all of these systems. But over time, it's pretty amazing. Can you all give yourselves a round of applause? Come on. Think of all the stuff that you know, right? And then how do we turn that around and share that knowledge back to other folks? More importantly, though, how do you take in new information when you're with a therapist or with a physician? How does it sort of work when you're getting a new piece of information? Yes?
Yeah. We have an artist here, sorry.
I love it. Can you illustrate my talk for me, please? I need some animation.
There's your animation.
Sorry, where are we?
Here.
There you are.
Yes. My son was diagnosed when he was 3 with 8P deletion and duplication. And not long, the neurologist sent us right away to the cardiologist. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to go by myself. I don't need any support. I mean, they already found something. I don't think they can find something else. You know, we just won the lottery. We can't win the lottery twice. It's like, and I went to the cardiologist, and then they found something. And I went down to the parking, and I was with my son sitting in my car, and I just started crying. I was alone. My husband wasn't there. I live in Los Angeles. It was quite a drive to my home. Everything is quite a drive from your home, you know. And I was just kind of broke down. Yeah, it doesn't always go down very well. And when he was diagnosed for autism, he was 5 or 6. I went alone again. You know, didn't think I needed any support. And then they gave us the diagnosis, and I came out, and I was crying alone in the parking lot again. Still have that long drive ahead of me. And I called my husband, and my husband said, you know, when you went into that office with your son, and you came out of that office with your son was the same, you know. From the time he went in to the time he went out, nothing happened. It's just a word, you know, don't worry. And so now I still go alone to the appointments.
I was so hoping you were going to say I had this realization that I should always take a buddy. I firmly believe in bringing buddies.
I still believe I don't need the help, you know. But at least I have this new look upon it now. And I always remember my husband telling me this. You went into that office and you came out with him, and he's exactly
You're the same, your child's the same, you just got more
Nothing
words.
has changed. So
Yeah.
now I accept it much better.
That's
when,
a-
when
that's a good
diagnosis-
perspective.
When a diagnosis falls down. Yeah.
What experience have other people had with sort of getting information?
We learned really quickly to not like hearing questions. Like, so what do you know about brain development?
Who's
I'm right
talking? Wait,
here.
there you are. Sorry, I'm really blind. I apologize.
It's all right. I'm right
Where?
here. So I like get scared by questions now when they start asking me questions like, so what do you know about the spine? I'm like, yeah, I don't want to know anything about it. Please don't tell me anything. But I also know about myself that I have to take my husband. I don't go to appointments by myself because I'm an incredibly emotional person. And I have a lot of little kids, so I'm tired all the time, which makes me more emotional. But I shut down anytime I get from the very first diagnosis that we've had with Piper, which was when she was in utero, to now, I shut down. I don't know what to do. I'll have a million questions a half hour after I walk out of the doctor's office. But when they're talking to me, I'm totally silent and like have nothing. So I have to have somebody with me so that I can process those things, and then we can write them down, and then we can call the nurse and ask. And that's something I've learned because I can't process information sitting with a doctor or a stranger in the moment.
You know, a lot of patients and families use the voice record on their phones. And
What a great idea.
Record their meetings with the doctors. So anyways, we have, sorry, just wanted to, over there.
So one of the things we do, I think both of us go into fact-finding mode like a lot
Okay.
to just kind of help delay the emotional side of it, I think, for a little bit. And it ends up being almost like neither one of us are in the medical field, but we feel like we are for a little while. And then afterwards, I think recently, Maya and I were chosen to be part of a kind of resiliency study at Stanford. For
Oh,
parents.
yeah, you talked to me about this,
Yeah.
actually. We're
And
going to have
that-
to bring this
it was
to the
really-
next meeting.
It was really helpful, actually. I think it helped a lot in kind of getting to the point of reframing and not letting yourself get into these thought loops that inevitably used to happen when this stuff happened. When we hear some of this news of catastrophizing and just getting stuck on, okay, what's next? So really now it's just, all right, let's get to the details, as much information as we can get. Let's write down what we can for the next meeting. And so we make sure that we have those things to talk about.
Yeah,
at the
that's what I was going
beginning
to
of the
ask is
meeting.
how do people prepare for
get-
those conversations?
Get that for the next one, because inevitably there's going to be a next one. There's going to be one after that. And then see if we can kind of talk through and process it together, kind of as a team.
Excellent, thanks. Do I have other volunteers?
Anybody else? Just raise your hand, we'll get you a mic. Okay. Right back there in the upper left.
Am I allowed to go to the second bullet point?
You can go to any bullet point you like.
Okay, good. What I noticed a lot is in advocating for rare diseases and meeting new parents, they're not given the information from their healthcare providers. They're said, oh, you have a chromosome disorder, we'll talk to you in a month. And then they're left with nothing, and they don't know what to do. And so my husband and I became advocates for the community at Rutgers University in New Jersey. They work with special needs families in the area, and they have 2 days. It's a 2-day study and report about special needs, seminar about special needs families. And then in the evening, they come to our house for dinner.
Nice.
And all they know is that we have a child with a disability, but they don't know anything about her. And so we educate them. And we're supposed to bring up 3 points that make an impact on their lives. And we feel good because we feel like we're explaining to them what you need to do right and what you shouldn't be doing. And we get letters of appreciation afterwards. And I think the communication from the researchers and the providers is changing.
Yeah.
And with programs like they have at Rutgers, and I know they have them throughout the country. It's just you have to find out
Project
which.
Doc and things like that.
Yeah.
Some of the big medical centers.
Yeah. So I think it's really beneficial to both people involved.
Yeah. What we've done just at my university is from the year that I started there's another physician there who also works with a particular rare disease community. We kicked off Rare Disease Day at our university. Anybody here from Connecticut? We have no Connecticut people in there. All right, I'm going to find the 8P family from Connecticut. Because I'm gonna drag you to Quinnipiac for Rare Disease Day if you're not in DC with Carrie. Or anybody else who wants to come from the region. But that's part of what we do, is trying to educate all kinds of folks from health sciences and up-and-coming physicians about, and we have a patient panel every year. So I want an 8P family on my panel this year so that we can get that word out to help people think differently about appreciating the experience and asking the right questions.
Right here on the right.
Okay. When we first got our diagnosis, we didn't know that anything was wrong with our daughter. We went from... Okay.
We need a mic in the back for Rebecca.
It's okay. We went from thinking we had a normal baby to we had an unrelated medical emergency that led to this as an incidental finding.
Wow.
So, we were really, really shocked with it. And then we were left with it to just kind of, internalize what it all meant. So we felt, we fumbled our way through it for a long time just because we had no clue what it meant. And I think that, I guess it's just kind of a statement on like what we're doing here. In that, having this community of people, of parents who've already like been through several years of something, I feel really fortunate that I can talk to people with younger kids, because my daughter is 7, and the fact that there's a lot of little ones here that maybe haven't thought of the things that we've gone through yet, or they haven't gotten to that point yet. Being able to act as a resource, I think, is a really cathartic experience. It's one of those things that makes me feel really, really good to be able to, act as, if I can be available as a sounding board for somebody who has their own thoughts. Because initially it was a really, really cold dunk in icy water. We were really alone, so.
And I think, I know, Rebecca, I know you have something to say. But I think one of the dads brought this up yesterday, and I apologize, I don't remember who it was. But we were talking about the idea of seeing each other's kids at different stages, from the really little ones to the young adults in the room, and sort of learning from one another and learning, well, maybe this is what we have to look forward to, or these are things maybe we should be thinking about or preparing for. And that is a very human thing to do. I think sometimes people feel a little guilt or shame or discomfort with the idea of, I'm looking around the room to see, well, is that where our future lies? But I think it's really important to know that that's part of why you're here, right? Because you need those yardsticks because you have a big unknown that you're facing. And so you got to use each other to sort of gather that information. Ideally, over time, all of those research studies that I hope you're all excited to be part of in the future, right? That will also bring you more data about maybe what your trajectory for your child will be. But just being with each other and kind of using each other as markers is actually a really important thing to do.
We've found a huge change in our acceptance of everything since we've changed the language that we use.
Yeah.
So we decided it was an exercise that I'd done with somebody on a course I was on, and she asked me to introduce Hannah. And after I'd done that, we realized that it was all deficit-led. Yes. It was everything that she couldn't do. It was she suffers from.
I never use that word.
Yeah,
so that
word. But since we've changed that, and since we've changed her introduction, it's like all these things that she's incredible at. And by the way, she also has induced L8P and lives with epilepsy. Right. But it's always at the end now, and we only have those conversations in medical emergencies or when we need apply for a piece of equipment because they focus on
because that's the language you
deficit-led
need.
side
Yeah.
of things. But our whole outlook on everything has changed since we switched how we speak, and that power of that language surrounding it all has made just a phenomenal difference to everything for us.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of where we started, thinking about the medical model and the social model and how we understand. And if you're talking about strengths, what are her strengths? What are the things that she's doing wonderfully? That's where you start.
Can I read her introduction? Is that okay? Can I read her introduction? It would
Sure,
literally take
absolutely.
2 seconds. So we say that Hannah is a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, and she's Nana's Hannah. She's a cousin, a friend, a student, and a teacher. She's an actress, a musician, a singer, a selfie queen, a snuggle monster, and a wind-up merchant. She loves music and Curious George. She loves school and friends and dancing and handbags and dressing up, and her favourite pastime is seeing how far she can wind up her little sisters. She loves people and being included. She knows when she's been left out. She loves food, but especially chocolate and gravy. She teaches unconditional love, patience, gratitude, resilience, and strength. She also happens to have profound and multiple learning disabilities with a primary diagnosis of INV Del-8P. She lives with a severe learning disability, epilepsy, complex arachnoid cysts in her pineal gland, hypotonia, and a CVI. She's mostly non-verbal, although she's extremely vocal and communicative, hypermobile and hypotonic. But first and foremost, she's Hannah.
I love that.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
I absolutely love that.
But
don't you all want to go home and write one of those?
Changing that has changed everything for us.
Can I just ask, does she like chocolate and gravy together?
No, well,
I heard she likes chocolate and gravy. I was just I'm like, I hope
a couple
not
of weeks ago,
together.
she dipped some watermelon in mayonnaise, and she was so happy. So who knows?
Sorry about that.
Let's see, where do we want to go? I want to go. We talked about a bunch of this stuff already, so I'm going to skip here. Because I think we're starting to talk about kind of this piece. Right, that all of you in this room are learning an incredible amount, hopefully, from one another. And who's going home with new ideas? Who's going home with new ideas? Maybe a new strategy in your mind, something you want to try, right? But every family finds a different place to sort of fall, and it will change over time even. It may even change from day to day. There are times where you get to a place, right, of acceptance, of adaptation, of this is our new normal, right? This is how it's going to be, and that gives us a place to sort of go, okay, then we move forward from here. And that's great. That's wonderful. And that works really well a lot of the time. There are other moments in time, and just other families as a whole, who say, nuh-uh, we're not accepting any of this. We are going to keep up fighting. We're not going to accept this the way it is. We're always going to push. We're going to keep pushing. It can get a little exhausting. But I see this not only with families, but with individual patients. I worked with dialysis patients for a long time, mostly teenagers, which was a joy. Really was. Really was. I love them. I'm still in touch with some of them now that they've moved out into the big grown-up adult world. But I had a couple who they would not do half the things we told them to do. Right? They would not follow their diet the way they needed to. They would not always come to dialysis the way they needed to. I'm type 1 diabetic. I don't do half the things I'm supposed to do now as a grown-up. I didn't do it as a kid. I kind of appreciate that, and I feel like it's developmentally normal that we don't listen to all the recommendations and the things we're told to do. Because sometimes I feel like when you do that, it's almost like going, okay, I just gotta buy in and go along and do it. And sometimes I think it's important to know for yourself and to sort of give yourself a break. Oh, I'm not doing everything the docs told me or the therapist told me. That's okay, because that's part of your sort of keeping up the fight, that I want something different. I want something different for my child. I want something different for me. So you're always kind of in that balance, right, between those two places. Does that ring true for folks? And it's going to change. Some event will happen, right, in your child's life, or some transition may happen. Moving from, sort of birth to 3 into school systems, moving into different school systems, moving into maybe different healthcare providers. As those different moments in life happen, or perhaps as a medical crisis happens, or as a positive, a developmental milestone that you've been working towards, you hit, right? Then that changes where you are. And so that's going to move, it's going to be a moving target all through your life and through your child's life. And you're going to go about that renegotiation with yourself. You're going to readjust maybe your expectations, your goals with your child and with your family. And that never goes away. I hate to tell you that. I would love to tell you, like, okay, you come up with a philosophy and you can just ride on it forever. But that doesn't always work that way, right? Things come up that make you go, no, wait, we have to reconsider. And I find I've had experiences of families on both ends of the spectrum where they say, we're going to do everything we can. Like you're talking about, who was talking about canoeing? Where's my canoeing family? I think that's so awesome, right? But we're going to do everything the way that we want, as best as we possibly can, and we adapt as we need to, but we adjust our lives sort of around the illness as we need to, but we try to keep our lives going the way that we want them to. I've had other families that say, that just doesn't work for us. We need to set up our lives, our schedules, figure out what's going on for us so that the illness is the priority, the condition is the priority, my child's needs are the priority, and all the other stuff comes later. There's a family wedding, there's a family birthday party, maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't, because it depends what's going on with kiddo today, right? And neither of those, both of those things actually are absolutely right. Right? You have to find sort of what balance works for you and your family. Where do you think you are in that continuum? Dare I say spectrum? Yeah. Yeah.
Having life or real life, like, okay, let's go somewhere and don't think. But we also have to stick on this. I mean, I think it's important to have just a good equality. I don't know how.
Right.
Yeah, between both of them.
Right.
But I think that will take some time because we have first to accept the disease, the malady, and and after that we have to have everything fixed and planned, and after that we can have some.
And then you have the freedom.
Yeah.
That comes with it.
Yeah.
And we have.
For me, it's like that.
And right up here.
Hi, it's on? Okay. I was just thinking as you were talking about how our daughter's 4.5, so it's taken us about 3.5 years, maybe 4, to even adjust to the fact and accept that this is our new normal. So before then, we were fighting a lot. But now we kind of see her as she's just one member of our 4-member family.
Okay.
And we need to do what's best for our family as a whole. And sometimes that means that a therapy isn't going to work. And that also means that our priority isn't necessarily fixing, that maybe it doesn't need to be fixed. Maybe it's okay just to be what it is for now. And also realizing, we also spent 3.5 months in the NICU when she was born, so we learned fairly quickly that we're the parents and we're the ones that say yes or no, not the doctors, not the therapists.
Yeah.
And the therapists like to say, oh, you should do this and this and this and this and this every day. And we're like, nope, sorry.
Not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. And so we are learning to try to fit the disabilities to the life. And she has a younger sister as well, and we think it's really important for her to have a life and know that she is completely accepted for who she is and that her life doesn't have to revolve around her sister. So we are also trying to adjust schedules so that she can have her own special things to do as well. Nice. And like you said, that'll change and adjust as things grow and things change and stuff like that. But we just thought it was really important to come to a place where we're like, is this something that we need to focus on right now? Does this change anything about her life or our life? Or is it just going to add stress?
Right.
And that's what's important.
Yeah. I really like what you said about sort of broadening your lens to think about what's good for us as a family, and that your daughter is absolutely part of that, but that looking at sort of the bigger equation is a great idea.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. I got 2 minutes. Not you. I got 2 minutes? I got 2 minutes. All right, I'm almost done. Go for it.
Hi. Is this on? Yeah?
Yeah.
So Anna's 13, so she's a little older than a lot of the kids. So finding a fit. So Anna does not walk, and there is not the opportunity to do a lot of things that normal teenagers do. And the kids are 18 months apiece, and there's 3 of them. So we've had to make arrangements to make sure that the other kids have their normal life too. So, and it can work if you both work together to make it happen. We've got a lot of outside help and support, and Anna is always our main focus in terms of making sure that she's being well taken care of. But Allison is 16, and she is a competition. She does all-star competition cheerleading, and we travel all over. And Parker is a scout, and Tony is in the scouts too, and they're constantly on campouts, and they live normal lives. They are very grateful for the things that they have. So I think that it teaches them empathy and compassion, and to be able to be grateful for the little things. So making sure that they all have something that's important to them is good too.
Right. So again, you're making that, looking at that big family lens
Yes.
that everyone's needs are somehow getting met.
Absolutely.
And always my last little point, that idea of that, what they're doing right now, what they're doing in these moments, traveling to cheerlead, going to scouts, doing those things is so wonderful and amazing.
Yeah.
And the same for you guys as parents, right? What are the things that you can do in that moment? And it may be 5 minutes. I always say my 5 minutes in the morning with a cup of coffee. I know you saw me like pounding coffee all day, but that 5 minutes of just sitting still and saying, okay, this is the start of my day. I hear traffic outside. Maybe some days I hear birds because I'm out in the country, right? But I get that couple of moments, and sometimes that's all we got, right? But how do we maximize that? Birds or coffee? What do you think?
It doesn't happen overnight. And
No,
it doesn't
not at
happen
all.
in the beginning
It's a
either.
skill. It's a skill
Yeah,
to be
and it takes a
adaptive
long
and learn.
time to get to
Absolutely.
that point where you can sit and be still.
Yeah.
So it's, you know.
All right. No, not yet.
Third time's a charm, Maya.
There we go. You're going to get these slides. I know Bina's going to share them. So you'll have all these links. These are just some other organizations and resources that I've found to be helpful over the years. So you have them, and we can probably delve into other things in other years. I certainly intend to see you all again. I am very easy to find. You are welcome to email me. You're welcome to grab me here the rest of the afternoon. I am easy to find on Facebook. I am everybody's friend on Facebook. I don't care if I'm a social worker. I don't believe in boundaries. I am friends with everybody, right? Every rare disease group we've ever worked with. I have Facebook friends.
She's got a lot of rare disease friends.
I
let me
got a lot
tell
of rare
you.
disease friends. And Stephanie has inspired me to go back on Twitter, so I'm going to try to do that too. So I am really easy to find, and I look forward to talking with all of you more. If anything stood out for you today, or if you got something totally wrong, please reach out to me, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, everybody, and for your contribution.
Thank you, Maya. I told you she was pretty phenomenal, right?